Professor Hao Li, Professor Angelina Yoon, Professor Daniel Shek, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the Global Youth Leadership Institute of PolyU, we would like to extend our warm welcome to all of you. I'm Hilary from Applied Biology, and I also graduated from the Institute's RISE Youth Leadership Program early this year.
I'm Brian from the Department of Chinese and Bilingual Studies, and also a member of the Institute's SOAR Youth Leadership Program. We are your hosts today. Hilary, I found that there are quite a number of guests and students from foreign countries joining us here today. So, do you know what's going on?
Of course. Today being the Global Youth Leaders Summit, it is also the Global Leader Lecture Series with Professor Hao Li from Stanford University. And it is also the official launch of Global Youth Leadership Institute. Also, we have with us more than 200 international students from the Global Students Challenge as well. Together, we have participants and youth leaders from over 35 nations.
Wow, we are really very global. Now, without any further ado, I would like to invite Professor Angelina Yoon, Vice President, Student and Global Affairs, and Director of Global Youth Leadership Institute of PolyU, to deliver the opening speech. Professor Yoon, please.
Don't worry, not a speech. Good morning. I'm really excited to so many young faces here in this hall. Today, I think we are celebrating the establishment of our Global Youth Leadership Institute, and then we are having this global lecture series by Professor Hao Li, and also we are having various occasions going on. Maybe I can introduce to you what is actually going on. This week, we are really celebrating a lot of global activities here at PolyU. Firstly, we have a Global Student Challenge program, whereby we have over 130 students from, I think, 22 countries and regions coming, and they participate in a Global Student Challenge, which is a competition for business plans, which have the intention of doing good, doing well. That is, they are presenting their business plan that can change the world. And tomorrow is the grand finale, and we are going to select the finals out of 40 groups. We have students from universities as well as students from 20 universities and 20 secondary schools attending in this Global Student Challenge. Maybe we can give a round of applause to them. Even though they are attending a competition, but we keep emphasizing that competition is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that we gather together, we share our plans and ideas, and then we are able to make good to the world by contributing their business plans, which can change the world in future. And we hope that during this process of competition, they will learn to know each other, learn to establish their networks, and then they will become a critical mass of young people who are able to change the world through social entrepreneurship and social enterprises. And another group that we are gathering this week is the students attending the Global Youth Leaders Summit. And we have also students coming from 22 countries and regions, and from over 18 universities, I understand, that are coming to join this summit. And they are sharing the projects they are doing in different parts of the world on social engagement. They are selected from over 100 projects that have been presented, and then we have selected these projects so that these students from the over 20 countries come to Hong Kong, and then they are sharing the ways in which they impact on social development in their respective countries. And we're looking forward to their sharing, because I'm sure they have done a lot of things in their respective countries. And the reason why we want to have this summit is that we want to gather them together so that they will learn to know each other, build up network, and then we may be able to do some cross-country projects so that we can change the world. Because the world is getting more and more connected, and there are a lot of issues and grand challenges that affect us, which require cross-cultural and cross-border collaboration. And so we want them to come together to share their thoughts, and hopefully at the end of the summit, they will be able to build up some projects and some connections whereby they can change the world together. You know, we might not do a lot of things, but we can start with small things, and I'm sure gradually we'll be able to change the world and make a difference. And today, the summit, the name of the summit is Let's Make the World a Better Place. Let's make the world a better place. And that is the focus of PolyU. PolyU is celebrating our 80th anniversary this year, and PolyU pride ourselves in social engagement and social responsibility. In fact, we have built up a network called the University Social Responsibility Network, whereby we gather universities in different parts of the world, and we come together, and we hope to make social responsibility the core mission of all universities, and you are a part of it. We have students, we have colleagues here, we have friends here, and let's make the world a better place. And today, this morning, I think we are all very excited because we are going to have Professor Hao Li from Stanford University to speak to us. And, but I would like to introduce our good friend, Margie Yang, Dr. Margie Yang, who was our previous council chair of PolyU, and he has made a lot of changes in PolyU, including facilitating us, allowing us to make social responsibility a core mission of PolyU. And I would like her to introduce Professor Hao Li, because Hao Li is a great friend of hers and mine. And I think she will be delighted to share with you about Professor Hao Li. Thank you.
Hello. I am really honored to have this opportunity to be with all of you, and especially to introduce a good friend, Professor Hao Li, from the Silicon Valley. Yes, exciting? Everybody talks about Silicon Valley. So let's look at one person who is a very key part of this, or the DNA of Silicon Valley. Professor Li is the Thomas Professor of Operations, Information, and Technology at Stanford. He's a leading expert in the global supply chain management, entrepreneurship and innovation in developing economies, and he specializes in value chain strategies. Now, in a way, you can say, hey, this guy's a nerd. He's really an OR guy. Operations research is all about numbers. But I think, by the way, we are no longer youth. The two of us are both dragons of the same decade. I won't tell you which decade, but I think we're soon eligible for cheaper fare in Hong Kong. During his years of studying the supply chain, I think he will agree with me that the most important supply chain is that of the human talent. Human resource supply chain, starting from, actually younger than you, starting from primary school, secondary school, then you guys, of course you guys are key. Then, because the reason I say that is so much is already in you. It's very difficult for companies like mine who rely on talent like yourself to make the changes that we aspire to without the DNA that all of the academics and teachers, great teachers, who have implanted in you. Now, I know Professor Li from there were so many ways that our paths connected, but one way or another, I'm very grateful because he has been on our board for quite a few years. And he has been not only an observer, but also a teacher. Our company, which, as Angie has pointed, we are trying to make a difference. We operate in different countries. we work with a lot of people from so-called bottom of the pyramid. And Professor Lee, his academic work is in fact exactly in the areas that we are involved in. He also inspired us to be engaged in the green supply chain. So on top of just working and talking about people, he's also very involved using the supply chain to promote environmental protection. So he started the supply chain, the green supply chain, and we jumped in, and we not only learned from it, but also benefited financially from being engaged in the green supply chain. Now, without further ado, I'm going to give you Professor Hao Li, another dragon.
Well, thanks very much, and good morning. Thank you. Yeah, it's my great honor to be here, and I want to thank Margie and also thank Angie for the very, very warm reception. It's my privilege to be able to be a part of this very important event. I have always admired Angie for her energies to build new things, initiate new programs, and this is one of them. And being a part of this exciting event is something that I really appreciate and treasure. So today, I'm going to share with you, based on my years of experience working in entrepreneurship and helping companies and helping individuals to build businesses and build values, either could be in a social venture or in a for-profit venture in the developing world. And I want to share with you a few lessons. For a number of years, I have been the director of the Stanford Institute of Innovation in Developing Economies. And so we have been engaged in different parts of the world to try to help companies to build values and serve the people. And so based on that engagement, I think I have a few simple lessons to share for you this morning. I'm very excited to see so many young people that are also enthusiastically embracing these values and wanting to go forward with your ventures. Some of you already have a venture and up and running. So I want to reinforce a few thoughts. And these thoughts are simple, but hopefully it would give you some thoughts to stimulate your ideas and also how you can continue your journey. These are very simple ones, but are all based on observations that I have, either with my own help at the companies that I work with or people that I know. I titled this talk to be Creating In and Out Values Through Entrepreneurial Innovations. And so you may ask, what is in and what is out? Well, what is in and what is out? Well, in and outs are important concepts, simple, but let me describe what in and out is. For those of you coming from America, you may think in and out is a hamburger joint. We have in and out in California, in the rest of the US, and they're all in and out. But this is not the in and out that I'm talking about. Usually, when we talk about in, it is that we try to help in the country, in the economies, in the developing economies, and help them by what? By designing and providing very affordable, sometimes extremely affordable products and services, and also building the efficient distribution system so that we'll be able to serve them with healthcare needs, with medicines, with food, with safe water, and this is education. Fundamentally, we're trying to help raise the living standard of the people in the parts of the world that are in need. And when I talk about developing economies, it doesn't have to be a developing country, because even in the United States, we have many pockets of poverty and people in need, and there are developing economies within a developed country. When we talk about out would be to enhance the value-creating activities in the economies. And that could be businesses, that could be entrepreneurs, which hopefully would enable them to increase the value add. And the value add would allow them to export, to allow them to maybe obtain more marginal values out of the products and services that they create. In turn, they would therefore employ more people. More people would be off the street, and ultimately, we also are benefiting the developing economies through both in and out. So those are in and out. So this morning, I want to share with you 4 simple lessons coming out of 5 engagements that I have and I learned from them. And some of them are mostly in, and some of them are mostly out. But of course, I think the line between in and out is blurred. It's not a clear, sharp one. Sometimes you have to start with an in because you want to enhance the productivity, you want to enhance the education level of the people in the developing world, but by doing so, they would be able to create new ways of doing things and products which enable them to export, and they in turn would hire more people. So it could be both in and out together, and so that's why I call it in and out. So it's not in or out, yeah, it is in and out. Yeah, I'm doing free promotion for this hamburger place, yeah. Anyway, so what are those lessons? What are those simple lessons? The first lesson is a very simple one. The first lesson is that when we try to understand our customer, we must start with empathy. I think empathy these days, a lot of us talk about design thinking. Right? Design thinking is an important concept for us to create any values, start any social ventures and entrepreneurs. Design thinking starts with empathy. Empathy says that we must understand customers and understand the people that we're trying to help. Now, that is a very simple thing to say, but it's not always possible to do. Because most of us thought that, well, I'm starting an entrepreneur and I'm starting a social venture, I'm going to help the poor, I know what the poor need. No, you may not. You may not know exactly what your consumer and the customers need. So don't over-rely on your experience. And always, my advice is to ask questions until you truly know what's behind the answer. Okay, yeah. So you may ask the first question, and people who work for you, people who did the survey and come up and with market research would come back with an answer and ask more questions, ask probing questions. Well, here are some examples that I want to learn and share with you. I learned and share with you. These are not in purely developing economies, but let me share with you because they are people that I recognize and know. Do you know who this person is? I don't know whether, my American friends would know. My American friends would know that this is a fantastic basketball player, right? This is this is Magic Johnson, sorry. Magic Johnson, yeah. Michael Jordan is also good. Yeah, so Magic Johnson once, I have a conversation with him. He was giving a talk he was a keynote speaker. I was the second keynote speaker. Yeah, sometimes when at some conferences, I find myself being second because Magic Johnson is more famous than I am. Yeah. So he was the first keynote speaker. And Magic Johnson says that after retirement, he has a lot of money. And he wanted to do something good with his money. So he invested. He invested in the first investment that he made is in movie theaters. You know, movie theaters, because he loved movies. Yeah, he's Los Angeles Lakers, and so therefore they're close to Hollywood. So he invested in something called a Magic Theater. It's a chain. And so now there are a number of Magic Theaters. But the very first one that he invested in, the very first Magic Theater, was in inner city. So inner city means that it's a very poor neighborhood, very, very poor neighborhood of the city. And he wanted to give back to society. He said, I wanted to build a theater in this part of the country to serve the poor young people there. Because the poor young people in inner cities do not have a theater of their own. Most people, when you build a movie theater, you build it in downtown, in a nice neighborhood, in the shopping mall. So those are nice areas. So the young people have to travel from the inner city to these places to see a movie. So they do not have one on their own. And so Magic Johnson says that I want to give back. I want to build a movie theater for them. And because he has no experience and knowledge about running a movie theater, so he went around and he hired a very experienced manager. So this manager turns out to have 35 years of experience running movie theaters. So Magic Johnson says that, perfect, this is the right guy. You have 35 years of experience, help me. So he purchased an old rundown warehouse. And then he started renovating and tried to convert it into a movie theater. And this 35-year experienced manager helped him to supervise the renovation. So the day before opening, Magic Johnson was checking the movie theater. He went around and checked, and everything was in good order. He was very excited, very happy. He said, okay, wonderful. This is great. This is my theater. I'm going to serve the young people in the inner city, and they would enjoy this movie theater. But one thing he also checked out is the food store. You know, in every movie theater, it's very important that you have a good food store because people like to buy popcorns, ice creams, 7-Up, Coca-Cola there. So he checked, and he was also happy because that food store was well stocked with inventory. Until he checked the inventory of hot dogs. You know, in movie theaters, there is something called hot dog that they sell. And he found that there were only 50 of them. And so Magic Johnson says that, look, I am expecting hundreds of people, hundreds of young people here coming tomorrow, opening night, and 50 hot dogs seems too low. And the manager told him, Mr. Johnson, I am telling you, I have 35 years of experience. You have none. Yeah. So please listen to me. People don't come to movie theaters to eat hot dogs. After the movie, they would go to dinner. Or they already have dinner and they come to a movie and they were already stuffed, or they are about to have a big meal. They're not going to eat hot dogs. They would have popcorns. They would have ice cream. They would have 7-Up. But no hot dogs. Don't worry. 50, plenty. I've never seen more consumption than 50 hot dogs. And guess what? The next day before the show began, they ran out of hot dogs. What is the lesson? The simple lesson that Magic Johnson told me was that 35 years of experience was running a regular movie theater. Regular movie theater, the clientele, the customer base, of course, they are middle-class people. They have a dinner after the movie. They have dinner before they see a movie. They don't eat hot dogs. But in the young people's mind in the inner city, they could not afford to have 2 entertainments per night. Hot dog is the meal, movie is the entertainment too, and they combine it, and hot dog is the meal. And so this simple lesson is don't overestimate your ability to learn about the customer's needs, thinking that you have experience. Our experience can sometimes be wrong. Why? Because the world is changing so rapidly. Because you may be working in a country that you may not be as familiar with. You have a good heart. You're from Hong Kong. You want to go to Brunei. But Brunei people may not have the same kind of needs and culture that you thought they need. So don't. Second lesson is from a general manager in Mexico. You know, Mexico is a country that has the highest consumption per capita of soft drinks in the whole world. The Mexican people like to drink Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, 7-Up, and so on. And so it's very important for Coca-Cola to win the battle in Mexico. Now, they have a new general manager. And the new general manager came on board, Mr. Lopez. Mr. Lopez came on board, and he asked the people who work for him. He said, can you tell me what kind of customers do I have? Not consumers, but customers. His question is about channel. So where do we sell? Do we sell to Walmart? Do we sell to Carrefour? Do we sell to 7-Eleven? Do we sell to what? Yeah, there are Walmart in Mexico, lots of them. But the subordinate told him with the answer, mostly a mom and pop shop. Mom and pop shop is our major channel. Because in Mexico, unlike in other parts of the world, like US, which is dominated by Walmart, dominated by large stores, Mexico, 70% was still mom and pop shops. But General Manager Lopez was not satisfied with the answer. He was able to probe, and I think this is the key, learn how to ask the second question. We ask the first question, and sometimes we just immediately take the first answer and run. Ask the second question, because the second question may reveal something more. So what was the second question? Mr. Lopez asked, mom and pop shop, is it mom or is it pop? Oh, interesting. Mom and pop shop. Is it mom or is it pop? Does it matter? And the subordinate says that usually we answer this question, mom and pop shop. Most people are very happy. Oh, mom and pop shops, small shops. Does it matter? Is it mom or is it pop? No. Mr. Lopez says that it could be a mom shop because the shop is run by a mom. It could be a pop shop because the shop can be run by a pop. It could be a mom and pop shop because the husband and wife, father and daughter, wife run the shop together. It could be 2 fathers running it, it's a pop shop, and it could be 2 moms running it, it's a mom shop. It's possible, isn't it? It's possible. So is it a mom and pop shop, mom shop, pop shop, mom shop, pop shop? What is your guess? What is your guess? Your intuition. I don't know whether we have any delegates from Mexico. So what's your guess? Well, it turns out that it's interesting. I learned is that in Mexico, it's mostly mom shop. In Africa, it's mostly pop shop. Yeah, this is why you have to think deeper. Why? Yeah, you have to do some statistics. Yeah, but mom shop is quite popular in Mexico because this is a way for the wife or the mother to supplement income while the husband may be at work and may not have enough income. And so usually the shops are just people's home, and in the front of the home they run a shop to sell groceries. Or there are a lot of single moms in Mexico. And the single moms, this is one way for them to make a living, is to run a grocery shop and then they can still look after young children. But because it is mostly mom shop, then the way you serve the customers should be different. You should make sure that in the old days when Mexico was dominated by bottles, Coca-Cola is mostly heavy bottle, you know, the glass bottles instead of the cans. Those bottles are very heavy. And if you have a case of Coca-Cola, it is very heavy for the mom to carry them in and out. While in the past, the delivery person wants to maximize efficiency. And maximizing the efficiency means that you dump the Coca-Cola case in front of the store, go to the next one, dump, go, go, go. But if you want to be a good service, understanding the customer's need, because they are mom shops, you have to carry the Coca-Cola into the shop. And Mr. Lopez says that we must serve the customers well by bringing the Coca-Cola into the shop. In fact, you do more than that. You have to help the mom to put all the bottles onto the shelf. That is great service. While you're doing that, if you see any Pepsi Cola on the shelf, push them to the back. Why not? Yeah. So this is understanding. I learned from Mr. Suzuki. Suzuki-san is former CEO of 7-Eleven Japan. Now, 7-Eleven Japan, amazing company. He just stepped down last year as the chairman and also the CEO of 7-Eleven Japan. So on April 10, 2015, they opened in Middle East. 7-Eleven Japan opened in Middle East. In fact, as you know, 7-Eleven Japan, the USA 7-Eleven actually now reports to 7-Eleven Japan. Used to be the other way around, but because of the financial problem that the US has, so the 7-Eleven Japan people infused capital to save the parent company. So today, 7-Eleven USA report to 7-Eleven Japan, reversal. I always told my students is that be nice to your children. Yeah. Well, Mr. Suzuki, during the time when he was addressing the business people in Saudi Arabia, when they opened a new store, and he says that the secret of the company's success is to always zealously, forever, learn about the customers. So don't underestimate this important task. Ask and ask and ask. So Mr. Suzuki gave me an example. He told me, he said that at 7-Eleven Japan, we are the largest outlet of pantyhose. Okay, it's very interesting that the Japanese like to buy pantyhose at 7-Eleven stores. Yeah, in Hong Kong, I don't think people buy pantyhose at Circle K. Mostly you go to department stores, right? But somehow in Japan, 7-Eleven Japan is number one, sales. So at first, the people who work for Mr. Suzuki thought that they should expand cosmetics section in the store. Because cosmetic, if people come to buy pantyhose, then they'll buy cosmetics. Cosmetics is high margin, so it's a good way to expand the business. But Mr. Suzuki says that, well, I always want to ask questions. I don't believe in data at face values. People come to our store to buy pantyhose. Are they all women? Now, interestingly, this question seems obvious, right? They must be women. Why would men buy pantyhose? In Japan, what you found is that this is what 7-Eleven Japan gave me, and they translated it so you can see there's some typos. On the left-hand side are the top 10 convenience stores that sell pantyhose. On the right-hand side are the bottom 10. And then you can immediately see that most of the best-selling pantyhose stores are in offices and stations. At every subway station, at every train station and bus station, there is a 7-Eleven. So people do buy pantyhose at stations. And then they dug deeper and they discover that during the day, most of the customers are indeed women. But there is another peak sales at night. Between 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. at night, most of the customers are middle-aged men. So you may say, wow, what kind of a country is that? Yeah, well, why would middle-aged men sneak out at night to buy pantyhose? Yeah, so there are all kinds of hypotheses. But it turns out the explanation is quite simple. It's because they're at the train station, it's on the way home, they would always pass by a 7-Eleven store. And they would buy pantyhose for their wives. It's very simple. And people work late, Japanese work late, 7 p.m., 8 p.m. is when they get out of work, 9 p.m., and on the way home, they would buy pantyhose. Now, armed with this information, now that you know the real customers, what 7-Eleven Japan did is amazing. At night, if you want to look for pantyhose, where could you find the pantyhose in the store? It's next to the beer section. And people will say, why would you put beer together with pantyhose? Because you know the customer, finding customers. So the first lesson at night, 7-Eleven, go buy beer while you're buying pantyhose. True customer needs is not simple. So don't make this an automatic task, thinking that you know the answer. Always zealously go and look for the true customer needs. The second lesson is that in all your social ventures, you need to orchestrate 3 flows. And I call it the material flow, information flow, and financial flow. You must orchestrate these 3 flows. You must do these 3 well. You cannot just simply focus on one flow, ignoring the other 2 flows. So you must orchestrate. So every one of you should look at your social enterprise or venture and start thinking, how does information flow work? Information flow means that the flow of information between you and your partners. It could be your suppliers, it could be your customers, it could be your channels. Look at how information flow well. Material flow, service flow, and the financial flow. I work a lot in Ghana. In Ghana, Stanford has a center in Accra. In Ghana, it turns out that one of the very common agriculture is shea butter. Shea trees is grown only in Africa, and Ghana has the best shea trees. Everywhere you can find shea trees. But the problem is that most of the farmers are women farmers. It's so easy to grow, and therefore women who are single moms or people whose income is not high in the family, they grow shea to supplement income. And the shea butter trees are everywhere. But the prices of shea butter is very low. Why? Because it's everywhere. You can think about, if everywhere everyone can grow, then the price would not be high. Second is that many of the women farmers oftentimes have to sell their crop prematurely. Why? To the loan shark, to the middleman, to the wholesaler. Why? Because they don't have savings. So if you have a sick child at home and you have to bring the child to a hospital, you don't have money. The only thing that you have, the asset is your crop. But your crop is not ready yet, but because you need money. So you have to go to the middleman and say, okay, I'll sell it to you at a deep discount. And that's why the farmers are forever poor as a result. They could never recover once you start having money lost. So it is very important. It is a very common thing you can see everywhere in Ghana. There are trees, there are kernels to bring into the butter. So what I was able to do is to work with a few companies, organizations, I would say, to focus on the following. First, we have to help the moms. We have to help the women farmers. And we help them by arming them with information, because they need to know how to grow, how to irrigate. So we teach them how to do it, recognizing where the potential prices, ups and downs are. That's using SAP as a partnering organization. Second, we have to figure out because I'm not an agriculture expert, so I won't know how to help people to grow shea butter. So I have to engage with a nonprofit organization called OLAM to help the farmers, to train the farmers. And I have to find the channel. So we have to engage a channel, in this case, Sikau Ghana, to be willing to buy the crop. But to do all this, we must avoid distressed sales. We must avoid the fact that the farmer have no money and therefore have to prematurely sell the crop. And to do that, we're able to work with Planet Finance and also Grameen in Ghana to do microfinancing. 3 flows together. We started with 1,500 farmers in 2010. Now we have 22,000 farmers. The great thing is that their prices, because they grow it in the proper way, they irrigate it the proper way, they do not have to distress sales, and their incomes have increased significantly. They were able to sell the crop at much better than distress sales, and there are 50% reduction in distress sales now. This is ultimately fundamentally helping the real farmers. But we do not stop it there, because ultimately the higher value creation is to help the farmers to grow something not for food. Because food is abundant. Everyone can have shea butter food, and therefore it cannot command a big high price sales. But if you help them to grow in a sanitized way, in a proper way, then you'll be able to process it as cosmetic ingredients. Cosmetic ingredients command a much higher margin. And so ultimately you can export and helping the farmers. I have a very good friend, Daniel Spitzer, who is a former student of Stanford. Daniel Spitzer, I think this is a lesson for all of us young people. When he graduated from college. He went to Bhutan as a Peace Corps. So it was such a young person's dream to say, okay, yeah, I just want to help and learn about the developing economy. So he spent 2 years in Bhutan. He learned how to speak Bhutanese, which is not easy, and he's an American young person at that time, and he enriched himself with an understanding of the needs and interests and the culture, tradition of a place. Then he went to China to work in forestry, and he made money, successful businessman, and now he wanted to give back. And give back is that he knew Bhutan well. He went back to Bhutan. And he went back to Bhutan to grow hazelnuts. Because it turns out he recognized that hazelnut is a good crop. It's a very high value crop. It's the world needs hazelnut. Hazelnuts can only be grown in Turkey, Italy, US, not too many countries. But Bhutan has the right climate, has the right weather. He knew because he spent 2 years there. So he learned. And so he went back, and it's much easier because he spoke the language and he was able to line things up. But still, he has to work on the following. First, he gave smartphones to every farmer because it is very difficult to travel around. And how can you teach the farmers? The best way is everyone use a smartphone. You can send them messages. This is how the tree should be treated. This is how you would treat the disease. This is how you treat the pest. This is how you irrigate, and using the wireless phone. And you give them the seed. The seeds were cultivated in Yunnan, China. And then, in fact, you can see the flow. The flow is very good. You would cultivate, you culture the seed in Yunnan, then fly to Bhutan. But flying to Bhutan is non-stop flight. No, there are no non-stop flight. You have to go through Bangkok. And from Bangkok, you go to Bhutan, and then you help the farmers to grow. And once the farmers has grown the trees and collect the nuts, then you ship them to Calcutta. And then Calcutta, you can ship it to Switzerland for chocolates, for China, and so on. So the material flow. But it turns out the financial flow is also important. The Bhutanese are so poor, they could not afford to buy the seeds. You have to give it to them free. Free, yeah, even $1. Originally, he thought that maybe I can charge them $1 US. No, even $1 is too much. Free, you just grow, I just help. But then you sell it to me, I help you to do the channel. And he promised that he would give back 15% of the profit back to the country. And so that's why he was able to build a nursery in Bhutan. He was able to teach the farmers there. These are the farming sessions, outreach program to teach the farmers. And they grow hazelnut on degraded slopes. Degraded slopes means that the farmers have already deforested. And so now you're restoring the forest by growing hazelnut. So you're not destroying the environment. You're helping to restore the environment. And the benefit is tremendous. I send many students to work in Bhutan to help with them. And one of my students says that, coming back, he said, oh, I feel great. And because I'm able to learn and use the Android to help the customers, I travel around Bhutan, and I now know how to meditate well. So this is my student, Stephen Lee. I don't know whether he was photoshopping this. Yeah. Okay. It's not real, maybe. The third lesson. The third lesson is that in all your social ventures, I would urge you to always ask the question, what, who, where? What do you mean? This is the design of the business model. Designing the business model, you have to ask what. What means that in your venture, there are multi-steps. Which are the steps that you must do yourself, and which are the steps that you want to work with a partner? You cannot do everything. We all have to learn which are the steps that we must do, because it's so essential. What are the steps that is best to leverage the outside? If it's outside, who? Who should be that outside? Should it be somebody that already worked in the agency, or do we create another company to do it, or do a who? This is who. Where do you do that step? Like in the case of the hazelnuts, the culture is in Yunnan because in China there are good agriculture experts to help you grow the seed, and so therefore they chose Yunnan. And so you have to know where. Where should we do it? So this is designing the right business model, thinking through the what, who, and where questions. I work with this company called Macau. Some former students of mine also are engaged in it, in Ethiopia. You know, Ethiopia is an amazing country. It used to be a country with a lot of chaos and war fighting, and so economic poverty. But the country is actually on a good slope these days. Many of the apparel companies are also, H&M is also sourcing from Ethiopia. So Ethiopia GDP is continuously rising. Turns out the Ethiopians like chicken. So chicken is a very good product to serve the people there. They like chicken. They did not have enough chicken. So this company is to say, let's grow chicken. So the McKelly Farm is that let's grow chicken in Ethiopia, serving the people. So this is a good business, yeah. So initially, the company says that, well, what is the chicken value chain? I've studied chicken value chain, yeah, so I know the chicken comes from eggs. Some people disagree. Yeah, chicken comes from eggs, or chicken comes from chicken. Yeah. Is it chicken first, or is it egg first? Well, this is a meaningless debate. So let's start at something. I start with poultry, chicken first. Chicken lay eggs, some chicken, not all chicken, right? Yeah, some chicken lay eggs, and the eggs are developed into DOC, day-old chicken. Day-old chicken is very important because some of the eggs don't hatch, and you have to make sure that the eggs hatch into healthy one-day-old chicken. From one-day-old chicken, you grow it into 30 days old, and 30 days old, then you can distribute the chicken for slaughtering and for consumption, yeah, and the consumer. So it's a very simple value chain. So what McKelly said is that, okay, good. What we do is that they work with the government because they all thought that many of us, especially you work with developing economies, you know, governments are important. So you have to work on the good side of the government. So they went to the government, the Ethiopian government, and said, oh, we want to build a chicken farm. But most of the chicken, we don't know how to hatch the eggs in the country. So no problem, we buy it from India. So India to Ethiopia, you know, is quite close. So in India, they would have the egg operation, and then they grow it into 1 day old, and then we put it into the ship and come to Ethiopia. And then in Ethiopia, we, McKelly, would grow them. We grow them to 30 days old, and they negotiate with the government. The government says, look, now it's peacetime. We have lots of armies. There are army people doing nothing. They have trucks. They can do this delivery for you. They can do distribution for you. Wow, they thought wonderful. With the army behind our back, yeah, this is no failure kind of a proposition. So the government says that we'll guarantee the price too. Guarantee the fixed price so that you don't have to worry about fluctuations in price. We would do the distribution logistics. So these are good, positive things. So they launch thinking that this is an easy slam dunk. But the reality, it turns out, is that the cost of the day-old chicken fluctuates a lot. Sometimes it could be very high, sometimes it's low, but because of the fixed price, you're stuck. Second, the government changed their mind. They said that, well, the fixed price, but now you have to pay 15% tax on top of it. So immediately your profit goes down by 15%. But the worst thing is, the government, you know, the military, they're used to fighting. They're not used to doing distribution of chicken. Yeah. So they are very lax, and yeah, they don't discipline themselves very well, and so they're always late. Now, when the trucks are late, the problem to you as a McKelly Farm is that you still have to feed the chicken. That's what we need to do, right? They're late by 2 days. During those 2 days, you cannot ask the chicken, is that, well, no food. Yeah, your delivery guy is late. You still have to feed them, and chicken feed is the major cost component of this value chain, as you know. So it increased their cost. So they had to modify the business model. They modify the business model in the following. They get rid of the government. Said the government, yeah, so thank you. I don't think we want to work with you. We should work directly with the farmers. Let the farmers rear the chicken. We would concentrate in buying eggs from India. And once the eggs come in, we hatch them to 1 day old chicken. And then we distribute the 1 day old chicken to the farmers. Because farmers are individual businessmen. They are self-motivated. They have incentives. They would take care of the chicken. And they would do the distribution. Actually, they know the local area well, and they can do the distribution. We don't take care of that. So they changed the business model. And that was how they stabilized the business. But today, they do even better. Because why? Because when you buy eggs from India, you can never be sure whether the eggs can hatch. This is something that is very delicate. You cannot just look at every egg. Not every egg can hatch to a chicken. So some eggs, maybe they have disease, and maybe they don't have a yolk right well enough. So the casualty rate is too high. And then there's a journey. The journey of the eggs coming in, a lot of things can happen. So McKelly decided that we should own the front part. We should do the poultry, but doing so, we have to feed the chicken. We have to also learn how to grow the chicken in a sanitized way to increase the yield. And so that's how you were able to build a successful business. So this is a simple example. So today, they changed the name to Ethio Chicken. You can see they are very successful. Lots of chicken, and the consumers are happy. The key is to understand the what and the where and the who question very well. Are the military government your ally? Sometimes you have to, no choice, but you have to make sure that they have the right incentives. They have the right, maybe, payment, financial gain, that they would be willing to work hard for you. So you have to understand the who question by understanding the incentives behind the partners. So think through the who, where, what question in every one of your venture. The final lesson is, I called it the 3S dimension, the 3S model of innovation. The 3S model of innovation is that oftentimes we thought we come up with this social venture idea and it would change the world, it would change the country, it would change the region. And that is good, that's an innovation. We support innovation, we encourage young people doing innovation. But what exactly does innovation do? And I would say usually that innovation can serve three purposes. The first purpose is a substitution model. Substitution means that your innovation is a better mousetrap than the existing mousetrap. And therefore, people will be better off because they have a better mousetrap, a different process, a different method. Second, your innovation could be to help the business to scale. So it's not, you're not inventing any new things. People are still adopting, they're trying, they're piloting, they're not sure, but you help to accelerate their scaling. Scaling is to make it widespread usage. But a more deeper impact would be what I call structure. Structure would be is fundamentally change the way people use the product, use the process, live, and the fundamental lifestyle could change. And that is very significant. Give you a simple example, simple-minded example. You think about the invention of automobiles. Automobile invention replaces the old way of transportation. And the old way of transportation is riding on a horse, okay, or a cow, or donkey. Yeah. And automobiles, trains, engines were invented, and it's much more comfortable. So if you have the innovation, you introduce this to the society, you're helping people. You're helping people to do transportation in a much more comfortable and time-definite way. Scaling means that you help people to travel more frequently. You travel more distance as a result of the innovation. If you travel on a horse, I don't know how frequent you can travel from Hong Kong to Beijing riding on a horse. Okay, I don't know how long it would take, yeah. But you cannot travel too frequently. With the automobiles, I think you can. You can travel more frequently. You can travel more distance. I can go all the way. So there are more scale effects, scaling. But the structural effect is that it fundamentally, with the layout of the highway system, suburbs were created. People do not have to live close to where they work. Shopping malls were created. It fundamentally changed the layout of the society and the city. So that's a structural effect. Structural effect oftentimes is much bigger. When the internet was invented, the first application most of us do is email. Okay? Email replaces phone call, replaces faxes, replaces paper letters. And that's a replacement model, substitution. And then scale. Multiple users, multiple buyers, multiple sellers, it creates the market. But structural effect means that today you can deliver products and services in an entirely different way than before. New business model has come out. I work with this Israeli company. And I know that Angie has been spending a lot of time in Israel these days, or at least PolyU is building a very strong tie to Israel. You know, Israel has fantastic technology advancements. One of the technologies that they're very good at is irrigation. Irrigation is very important because farmers need water. The world is short of water. Everywhere is short of water. California has a big drought for a few years. And Netafim's irrigation system is called drip irrigation. Drip irrigation is a high-tech approach. High-tech approach so that the outlets of the pipelines contains a microprocessor. And the microprocessor can be connected to the computer so that you can control, open, close, and then you can optimize. You don't have to waste water, because if you use the conventional way of irrigation, it's flooding. Flooding is very bad. It wastes water, it breeds weeds, it also breeds pests. So it's not a good way. It cannot optimize the productivity. Drip irrigation is precisely based on today's weather, based on the temperature, based on the humidity, based on the kind of crop that you're growing. I can do the precise drip. And the drip should be at night, should be drip in the morning, every time, and you optimize. So this is great, fantastic. And so Netafim was able to sell the system successfully in California, successfully in Australia, successfully in New Zealand, in Italy. All these countries, the farmers love it. The farmers says that this is wonderful. It gives us a means to irrigate well. But the company says that, look, most of the farmers are not in the developed world. Not too many farmers in California. Once you sow the field, you sow all. The biggest segment of agriculture are in developing economies. The GDP, percentage of GDP, agriculture is still high in developing economies. They still depend on agriculture. There are lots of farmers there. So they started going to Egypt. They went to Afghanistan. They went to India. They went to China, because these are the countries that would need irrigation the best. The problem is that when you go to these farmers, and you tell the farmer, in fact, one of the countries that they went to is Afghanistan. They went to Afghanistan and said, look, yeah, sir, I have a wonderful machine. This machine is expensive, but once you have mastered it, you can use the computer to control opening, closing, and the drip irrigation. Wonderful. And the farmer said, yeah, I'm excited. Number one, I wanted to buy it, but two, I don't know how to use it, though. Three is that I don't have money. Well, don't worry. Money, you can go to World Bank, you can go to IFC. They get money. But the World Bank and IFC said, no, I'm not going to loan you money. Why? Why not? This is a good way to double the productivity of the farmers, triple the productivity of the farmers. This is good, right? You want to support development. The World Bank says that I don't think the farmers would know how to use it well. And if they cannot improve the yield, they won't be able to get the money back, and the loan would be bad loans. We don't want to give bad loans. How come the farmers could not do it? So they asked the farmers, how come, are you sure you don't want to use a computer? And he said, no, I don't own a computer. I don't know, oh, you don't own a computer. That's a problem. Well, maybe you ask the World Bank to get you a computer as well. No, even if you give me a computer, I don't know how to use it. I don't even read. I don't even write. So it turns out there are a lot of farmers that are illiterate. Well, sorry, then you cannot use our system. I think you first have to go to school. After 7 years, you learn the language, and then you buy a computer, and then you come back. No, this is not a way. So Netafim thought that another way to do it is to send people there. Okay, this is another way. Send people to Afghanistan. Send them there to help the farmers to set up. Maybe I'll send them frequently, once a month. So January, this is how you set up. February, it's not as good as every day you can optimize, but it's still better than nothing. Sending people there, but sending people there is not easy. You know what? Why? Number one is that how many of you people would be willing to go to Afghanistan? Not too many. Many people are very worried about going to Afghanistan. So number two is the transportation, logistics. I learned from working with Netafim that to try to get to the farm is not easy. You can fly to the capital of Afghanistan. You can fly. There are airlines that take you there. But once at the capital, to go to the farm, there are no roads. Many of them, there are no paved roads. And the only way is to use a special company car. And the special company car is this. Why is it a company car? You can see we have the zero in. Is that because there is a blanket that says Netafim? A Netafim logo. That is how they identify this is the company car. Now, I have never ridden on a camel. If you take a picture and ride on it as a tourist, I think that's okay. But if you ride on this company car for 4 hours, it is no fun. I know, I guarantee you it is no fun, yeah. And so people after one trip said, all right, no more. I am not going next time. You have to ask somebody else. So this is not a solution. The solution requires another innovation. And this innovation is that they created something called Eurowise. Eurowise is to add sensors to the farm. So the sensors can sense temperature, humidity, pressure. And using the wireless network, you can send the signals back. And in the air-conditioned room, you can have the engineer optimize, opening, closing. In fact, because the same system can be the same pipeline, once you set up the pipeline, you can use it for water irrigation, for fertilizers, for energy management. So this is a complete crop management system. I found this is a much better solution. And this solution is a structural solution. When the company first started, is that they want to be a substitution. I want to give you good equipment, best equipment. And then I want to scale by reaching out to the poor economy, customize for India, customize for Pakistan, customize for Afghanistan. But today, the company motto, everyone of us has a mission statement. You should have a mission statement. What is your mission statement? Their mission statement did not even mention that we are an irrigation company at all. We don't make equipment, no. Our mission statement is to help you to grow more with less. Grow more with less, is it? less water, less energy, less fertilizer. I think that is a substitution scale and structural effect. I work with an agency called Riders for Health. You know, in Africa, where I spent more time in the past few years, there are no paved roads. Most of the countries, the people, live in places where there were no paved roads. No paved road means that if there is a patient, if this mother has to carry the baby to see a doctor, she walked. Terrible. There are no cars to take her. And finally, interestingly, is that this couple, Colemans, this couple are motorcycle professionals. So they race motorcycles. But because they were cross-country in Africa, they saw the needs. They saw the pain of the young mothers walking hours to the nearest clinic. They said, hey, we know motorcycle. We are motorcycle experts and specialists. Why don't we set up a special NGO, social ventures, in this case, to help? So I was working with them to help them to do the following. First substitution is to promote the use of motorcycle. Train the nurses, mostly men, male nurses, to use motorcycles. Don't use a donkey or don't walk or a bicycle. Use motorcycles because this is a way for you to reach the patients. Second, so they're starting. So all these are nurses. The nurses are riding on motorcycles, wonderful. Second, to increase scale, you must improve the service. That is to maintain them. Motorcycles are no good if you give them new motorcycles. After 2 years, they die. We must make sure that you do the right maintenance, the oil filters, changing filters, and so on. And so they teach people how to maintain the motorcycles, what time you have to check the tire, what time do you have to change the filters. So in fact, Andrea Coleman, the CEO, has given a talk once. He says, how can oil filters save Africa? She's exaggerating. Her point is, don't underestimate a simple thing like oil filter. Because if you change the oil filter right, it could be a difference between the life of a motorcycle of 2 years versus 10 years. And so that is a big difference. But fundamentally, the new model now is that they are helping the whole country of Zambia and Gambia to run their ambulances. Because their service system is so good. The Ministry of Health has said, hey, don't just serve our motorcycles. Help us with our ambulances. We have four-wheel vehicles. So you fundamentally is a new business model and helping. And I think this is wonderful. We have these pictures in Zambia, in Gambia, where they're intervening, where they're helping. These are the male nurses going out to visit, where the children used to be, they never got visited, and they have to walk themselves. And now the sick baby get taken care of. Here is a very simple diagram. On the left-hand side, the blue rings represents those counties that used to get visits by the health workers. And you can see there are only a few. But with this intervention, the right-hand side is the after, the pre and post, right? The post-intervention is that there are many more distant counties and regions get served. And so the service is better, and the health, there are more immunizations, there are more kits delivered, malaria kits and so on, delivered to the children, to the young people, to the mothers, and even HIV tests, malaria nets, education, lots of intervention to help the health status. So this is very satisfying. This is actually funded by the Gates Foundation. So I've come to the end of my talk. And the end of my talk is that I just want to reiterate 4 simple points. Okay? They're simple, but I hope that you all would use it to think about your venture, to see whether in your ventures, do you have a way to truly understand your customers? Are you just satisfied with what you think the customers need or a simple sample data? Do you know how to ask that second question? Do you not be blinded by your prior experience? So that's number 1. Second, examine your material flow, your financial flow, your information flow, to see if they're coordinated, to see they're well orchestrated. Number 3 is that don't look at yourself, look at your whole value chain. Your partners, your contract manufacturers, your service providers, your customers, your supplier. Are you doing the right thing? Or should something that you should not be doing, give it to somebody? Or should something that you need to bring in-house? And who should be the right one to do it? And number 3 is don't be satisfied with a substitution model. Substitution is what Kodak was able to come up with the instant digital camera. As you know, they are the innovator, but they did not scale. They did not change the structure, and they were phased out by others, right? So your venture may start with substitution because you have a new mousetrap to help the people. But don't stay there. Figure out a way to scale and figure out a way to fundamentally change the way people use your product and service, because that is more long-lasting and it would create more value. And those are the 4 simple things I'm very happy to be able to share, and it's really, again, what a great privilege to be part of this highly energetic, with a lot of the new ideas group of people here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lee. Please stay. To begin the Q&A session, may I now invite Professor Daniel Shek, Associate Vice President, Undergraduate Program of PolyU, to chair the session for us. Professor Shek, please.
Let us thank Hao again for his most exciting and insightful speech. Okay, a round of applause for him again. Thank you. So it is time for you to join in the discussion. So we got around 25 minutes. So any questions from the floor?
Professor Lee, I have a question. Just like what you mentioned during your presentation, that people shouldn't over-rely on their own experience. But I think there are actually some rules or golden rules in starting of a business or innovations. And should people break these rules, or how people can strike the balance between them? Thank you.
Your question is about, Your question is about how can the young people build on your experience, is it right? Or use your experience? Yeah. So I didn't get the final part, so sorry.
Because I think our experience is may have some conflict between innovations. Because innovation is, I think, it's about something new and haven't
That's right. Yes.
existed in the
That's
past.
right.
But
Good point. Yeah.
to a certain extent, I also think that innovations come from people's accumulation of experience. I don't know how to strike the balance between them.
Yeah, you're right, yeah. So especially for young people like many of you, obviously we cannot expect you have tons of experience, right? Not like the movie theater general manager who has 35 years of experience. So you don't have experience. But my caution is that sometimes we take a first answer immediately as if this is the answer. So you may not use your own experience, but you may rely on somebody's experience, or somebody's understanding, or some surveys, or some data. So we all today, we don't need to always just rely on our own experience, but we use data, we use information. But I think it's very important for us not to take those information at face values. You need to ask the second question, the third question, and understand fully before you jump to conclusions.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? So please introduce yourself first.
Yeah,
And then,
good morning. My name is Aditya Ramesh. I'm from Singapore. Thank you for the presentation, sir. I'd like to ask a question in specific to the Olam company, coming to Olam. So, as you see, many companies have the profit motive nowadays, and understanding that supply chain management, people are moving towards having an integrated supply chain management in order to lower the cost. To what extent is that a disadvantage for the locals who are under them, because they're lowering the cost and they might be facing low wages and such like that? So how do companies tackle that problem, and how do the locals, why do you advise that companies should not go towards integrated supply chains?
Thanks very much. That's a very, very good question, especially since I think our council chair, Margie Yang, actually represents a company that also have utilized a very integrated supply chain approach, right? So you have a good question. The question is the following, that I'll rephrase it a little bit. Yeah, say, as global companies expand your supply chain footprint, and sometimes we have to enter into Vietnam, we have to enter into Myanmar, we have to enter into Bangladesh and China and so on, and with a profit objective, right? Because it's lower cost. So is that sufficient as an objective, or are there other trade-offs that you have to balance, right? And I think it's very important that increasingly global companies recognize that, number one, is that low cost is temporal. So you have to recognize that today you go to Vietnam. But Vietnam is already, I remember Margie first set up a factory in Ho Chi Minh City. And now Ho Chi Minh City is not cheap, so she has to move to Hanoi. Now, you can continue to move everyone, but that is not a long-term solution. So we have to recognize that the low-cost option is temporal. Second is that when you develop the global supply chain footprint, you must be responsible to the regions that you serve and that you make use of. Why? Because unless the workers are happy, unless the communities are happy, it's not sustainable. And when Margie, I remember working with her to go to Xinjiang. In Xinjiang, you get the cotton from the farmers. Unless the farmers felt like they are also benefiting from the engagement, otherwise you're exploiting them, they would not like it. And so maybe they're willing to, because they have no other means, and they would grow the cotton and sell it to you. But as soon as there is a chance, they would grow other things and they'll get out. So in order for it to be sustainable, you have to ensure that you're good to the community. And what do we mean by good to the community? Is to preserve the environment, number one. Number two, education. Provide education for the school children. And perhaps even provide job opportunities for the young people there. I think that's very important. Increasingly, these days, especially companies that source from agricultural regions, which is agriculture is my interest, my research interest. The whole world, farmers are aging, aging everywhere. The average age of farmers in Japan is 72. So on average age of the people who are running farms are 72 years old. In China, it's over 60. In Europe, it's late 60s. So the whole world is aging, farming. Now, why is it aging? Because young people don't want to work in the farm. Okay. They know, they saw their parents, they saw their grandparents so tough work. I'm not going to work in the farm. There's no future. I want to go to the city. So we suffered from lack of other income in the farming region, young people leaving and not staying. So if you want to have a sustainable agricultural supply base, not only do you need to help the farmers, you have to help the community in the farm, so as to make sure there will be income, there will be jobs, there will be opportunities to make sure that the communities are strong and healthy, and the young people do not need to go. So this is very important, that we must serve the community. So I think this is an expanded view. It's not easy, and not every global companies have this approach. But this is what I think is necessary. Now, of course, I think that you can argue is that, the global companies as well, you're a charity. You're doing something nice for the world, but your cost goes up. No, ultimately, I found what Margie is doing, for instance, and as well, is that by being a committed citizen, by serving the workers well, you have less turnovers, you have less absenteeism. People are more loyal to you, and you will actually be better off. Your costs should go down. Your energy consumption goes down. It's more sustainable. A few years ago, when we have the riots in Vietnam, Vietnam has a riot because there is some anti-Chinese protest movement. Most of the factories have sustained damages because the riots and people are running around and looting, right? But because as well as factories were so good to the workers, and so the workers felt it, the workers recognized it, and they actually formed kind of a self-defense group to protect the factory and ask the looters, don't come here. This factory treats us well. I'm Vietnamese, but don't come. So you see, that in the long term, it's not increased cost. In the long term, business should be doing better. So it's not overnight I can change. But this is kind of my crusade, since I teach at a business school, to make sure business leaders recognize the issues that you just raised. It's very important.
Thank you so much. I just have one last question again. So coming to the point that the world is going towards technology, technological advancements. So this can be a threat as well as an advantage to businesses. So considering the fact that even these farmers one day, when they are educated over 10, 15 years, they might have their own computers and they can start doing what these businesses are doing for them. So how do you go about it? Like, how do we ensure that this is not a problem for both the people, the farmers who might lose their jobs, and as well as the businesses who might not get the farmer support? Thank you.
So the key is that, again, this is a question that I think is important for us to debate and discuss, right? So if you look at automation or the technology, look at in general technologies, 3D printing and all these robots and so on, if you look at those technology advancement as a replacement of labor, That's a substitution model. And that's a threat, you're right. So rather than having a factory with 20,000 people, you reduce it to 2,000, and the rest you automate, right? So, which is something that some companies are doing. Foxconn is investing in robots to reduce the labor content. But that is a substitution model. What we need to do is to figure out that maybe you don't do the same thing. You use it as a result that you now have the capability to be flexible, to speed up, and then you serve new markets. You create new products. You can do mass customization. And so your business structural model is changed. And when you change the structural model, then the country still has employment, and the employment would be on something else. Because there would be other service workers that are needed to support your new business model. So the key is not to just stay at substitution. Substitution would be damaging to the workers. We must help the local economies to create new business opportunities. And the new models leveraging the power of the technologies and the advanced computers and so on to help them to build new business models that would do more than just cutting and sewing, for example, in the apparel world.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very good questions and very good answers. Yes, please. Yeah, over there ahead. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, hi,
Yeah.
my name is Adam, and I work at Reset Network in the Netherlands. Mr. Lee, I wanted to ask you, since you've made a career at Stanford in the famous Silicon Valley, I wanted to ask you what you think of the whole American funding model of funding startups. You look at companies like Uber or Snapchat that haven't even turned a profit, and so much money is being poured into them, even though they're not necessarily creating or capturing the value that they create. So, what do you think?
So we need to think of the Silicon Valley as an ecosystem. So the Silicon Valley is an ecosystem of entrepreneurs, of funding sources, of legal systems, and technology providers like Stanford University and Berkeley, and there is all, yeah. And the ecosystem enables you to strengthen the potential values of an innovation. So that when an entrepreneur starts an innovation, you can count on many different funding sources. And the funding sources can be angels, can be large corporations, can be individual venture capital firms, large capital firms, and everything there. Second, you have to count on talents. So important that Margie mentioned about talents. In the Silicon Valley, we have lots of talents. Talents are people who have founded a company before, who have failed before, who have tried it before, and you can tap into it. It's very easy flow. It is a free flow of people talents, yes. And then third is that there are many, many partners that you can work with. If you want to create something completely disruptive, you may not be able to do it all the way yourself, but companies are quite willing to help you. Cisco, Google help you because they also see self-motivated interest. And so you must leverage an ecosystem. And the ecosystem is the difference, I think, yeah. So I have I've seen some research that people have done comparing the Boston Northeast region versus Silicon Valley. And why, if you think about 50 years ago, the Northeast region is where digital equipment and WAN computer, Data General, huge corporation, and they're nowhere now. And the Silicon Valley say, and the main difference is the ecosystem is there, here, in Silicon Valley. While in the Northeast, people build a protective castle. I am a big company, I must build around it with walls. I don't want my people to go out and talk to other companies. And it turns out that that is not the way to prosper in technology. Innovation requires people chatting, interacting, and even if they're competitors, but the interaction help. And so, which is why this type of forum is so powerful, so important, yes. I was chatting last night with Angie over dinner about the importance, and also with Helena, actually, I think, yeah, maybe it's Helena too, with the importance of the incubator. Sometimes the incubator concept, people think of that as an infrastructure. Oh, okay, you provide free, maybe discounted rent and electricity and office support. But the highest value of an incubator is that you have a group of people, like-minded, trying to build something new. And you can cry together. You can share your pain together. You can share and encourage each other. And you can inspire each other. And that kind of interaction is where the value is. So I would say Silicon Valley, the value of the Silicon Valley is really the ecosystem.
Thank
Okay,
you. Thank you for your question. Yeah, I see a hand, another hand over there. Thank you. Yeah, we got a question from a lady.
Okay. Good morning, sir. My name is Tolu Faloko from Nigeria. Thanks for this beautiful lecture. I actually learned a lot. It was an eye-opener for me personally. And I'm a Poly-UGSC participant. And quite interestingly, our project is actually in the area of agriculture. And what we're trying to do is that we're trying to utilize the tomatoes in Nigeria, because a lot of tomatoes are wasting. Nigeria has a lot of potential to grow tomatoes and other agricultural products, but they are operating below this potential, and then most times the tomatoes get wasted. So we're trying to get the farmers to cultivate more and then to add value to the tomatoes and even enrich it with vegetables. So that's basically our idea. But the question I have actually has to do with understanding true customer needs, because the part of the world where I come from is actually peculiar in the sense that there are times that you have to set up something in our area, and then for you to properly design your business model, you rely on secondary data, statistics from other sources that are not dependent on you, probably on the government or on an association. And in line with trying to understand the true customer needs, there is a necessity to be sure that the statistics are correct. Most often, we don't have the means or the mechanism or the power to do that, to ensure that the secondary data that we are using to get our own information is actually correct. There's no way we can determine the accuracy. So in that kind of situation, what can we actually do to understand the true customer needs?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
True customer needs.
Well, thanks very much. First of all, I love the country of Nigeria. Nigeria is a major country that we work with because our center has a center in Ghana, and Ghana is a small country. Most of the companies that we work with are Nigerians, and it's great that Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Ivory Coast. Nigeria is a huge country with a big potential. But again, you raise a good question, is that sometimes, how do you really truly know the real need of customers when you are relying on secondary data, right? So even if you ask the second question, even if you ask the third question, you may still not get the answer right, yeah. And so I would also maybe propose another important lesson, which is a lesson that I got from Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon. So people ask Amazon, Jeff Bezos, what is the secret of your company's success? And he says, fail fast and fail cheap. Wow, this is advice. You're advising us to fail? And so he said, no, yeah. Because, he said, Amazon's world is changing so rapidly. Nobody would know for sure what the customers truly need. You can ask, you can research, and you can hire McKinsey, and they won't be able to tell you the right answer. But the way where we make advancement is to try. We must try. But when you try, you don't think that you have the answer. You try with the intent that you always modify the solution because you know that it may not be right. So when you have that approach, you set things up to experimentation, and the experimentation would allow you to fail fast, meaning that of course, everyone likes success, but if you fail, you quickly learn that it didn't work, and therefore you modify. Fail cheap means that hopefully you haven't invested the whole bank to your first answer because it turns out to be wrong, right? So what we need is to design a flexible, agile kind of a process so that you will then be able to learn quickly and eventually figure out the right answer. So definitely, it's not easy. By just asking second question and third question, that may not be sufficient.
Thank you, but don't fail in your examination. Okay. Yeah, I think, any other hands? Okay, that lady, I think it will be the last question, okay, in the interest of time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for this opportunity. Fola Shadi Oriemi from Nigeria, too. My question is related to her question in terms of agriculture. Like, okay, we're dealing with tomatoes and all that, but how can substitution in terms of the 3S of innovation come in to tomatoes in agriculture processing?
Okay, thank you. The 3S,
Yep.
but we put in tomato in the equation.
That is right, yeah. So certainly, I think in many of the developing economies, agriculture is still the major focus, right? So you're right. So Nigeria has a lot of agriculture besides oil too, yeah. But in the crops, in the agriculture business, Substitution can mean multiple things. So first is that you can improve the farming method. The farming method is that you're growing the same fruit, but I improve the farming method, and therefore I'll be able to get higher yield and improve the refrigeration, the cold chain, so that the fruit won't perish. Most of the time, foods are disposed because of perishability. And so if you're able to preserve the cold chain well, you will increase. So it's the process. The substitution starts with the process. But it could be the product substitution. Product substitution would be, can we grow a slightly better high quality tomato which would command a higher price? Or can we grow the crop with consistency? Consistency is an important one. It's the consistency to grow, yeah. But the other structural impact, and scale would be to grow more. You have to be able to double the yield, triple the yield, and you grow more. But structure would be, I have been helping many companies to the following. Oftentimes, if you grow the crop, you don't process it, let somebody else process it, you don't capture the highest value add. The highest value add is in the processor. And the processor would be able to retain most of the profit. So what if we teach you? What if you innovate by helping them to say, you can also process it? Like the shea butter farmers, if they process it to become cosmetic ingredients, they capture the bulk of the value. I work in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is, instead of chicken, this time I work in pigs. Yeah. So I work with pig farmers. And the pig farmers, it turns out most of the values are captured by the slaughterhouse. You know, because pigs needs to be slaughtered. You can't eat the raw pig. So the pigs has to be slaughtered. And the slaughterhouse commands the middleman, in this case, captured about the value. But a farmer would never be able to do the slaughtering themselves. It's too big a capital investment. So what we did in Zimbabwe is simple, is to help to form cooperatives. Because cooperatives allow them to aggregate. With aggregation, they have scale. With scale, they can have their own slaughterhouse. You don't have to go to the outside external slaughterhouse, and you capture the value. That's a structural change. The structural change helped the farmers, in this case, the pig farmers, increase their values. But cooperations, of course, is an organizational issue. People don't trust each other. It's very hard to form a cooperative when I don't trust my neighbor. Asking us to all share, and so you have to overcome that. But once that's overcome, which is what happened in Zimbabwe now, we make a big difference. So substitution, scale, and structure is a good way to think about this issue.
Thank you. I got the last question, actually. How? Do you have any advice for our young people here today?
No. Well, thank you. I think young people need to have visions. Number one is that I think you have the right value systems of being able to use your talents and to try something different and try to make an impact. So that's the number one thing, is to have your vision. Don't be contented with what you can do. I actually talking about Nigeria, since we have two friends from Nigeria. I went to Nigeria to some high school, and we asked the high school people, because I think this morning, Margie says that the talent change should start earlier. And we asked the young people, is that, what would you like to be doing when you grow up? Simple question. Well, in the US, they may say, I want to be a baseball player, I want to be Magic Johnson, or I want to start up. Yeah. In Nigeria, overwhelmingly, people say that I want to work for the government. Now that, I think, is the problem. The problem is the what? Is that is not a good aspiration. Work for the government. Maybe they view that as, well, that's a stable job. Yeah, governments are powerful. But we have to overcome that. Why? Because it's simply because the students have never been exposed to the possibility of entrepreneurship, that there's the whole world out there. But once you're able to show them, actually there are many talents there. So Nigeria was my example. So we must have that aspiration, and we must have that vision that we can do it. But while you're doing it, the process is that you have to think through this question, understanding customers and so on. So the detail is actually very important. It's not sufficient for the aspiration and your idealism to carry through. Yeah, you have to then work out the detail. And the details are the one that I hope to share with you a few thoughts that you have. But I must say, it's congratulations, Daniel, to PolyU being able to convene such a powerful conference. I think the total energy of the people in this room is going to change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I think you can feel the energy, okay? So please join me in thanking Hao again for his most insightful speech and also his wisdom. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Lee and Professor Sheck, for the very inspiring session.